All right, so we're now recording. Welcome back, everybody. I do want to finish up our talk. We discussed the stages of sleep and why we need sleep and some of the biological perspective as well as some of the theories as to why we dream. So we're going to kind of round out sleep with talking about sleep disorders and discuss other altered states of consciousness, okay? So before we get moving, so how's everybody doing with their sleep journals? Does everybody understand the assignment? Did anybody not get around to downloading it?
I have it, but my thing is, I haven't been like dreaming or like really remembering my dreams. So
Okay.
like I just feel like I don't know, or like I haven't had a dream.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Well, the directions on there, you're going to have to submit something. And the directions were if you don't remember your dreams, that's okay. At least write down your sleep patterns, track your sleep patterns, just to kind of give you an idea of how long it takes you to get to sleep. If there's broken sleep, if you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you can't get back to sleep, or if you sleep through the night and you don't feel refreshed. So this is just kind of a practice for sleep journaling. And I usually do this, and I think I've explained this before. When I have clients or patients that come to see me and they're expressing that they're having difficulty with anxiety or depression, I usually look at two of the big things that I look at are their sleep and their eating patterns. And if any of those are off, and either one of those could be symptomatic of anxiety and depression, however, they also feed into those disorders as well. So I look at those very carefully, because if we don't get a full night's sleep, the next day we're irritable, we're probably not able to focus, and things just tend to go wrong, which feeds into that anxiety and that depression. So sleep is very, very important. My first step is to try and figure out ways to get people to relax and practice good sleep hygiene so that they can get a good night's rest. And that way they can transfer skills, they can learn skills with me the next day, or deal with their life a little bit better, have better interactions with people, and they're not so irritable. So sleep is very important, especially when we're considering mental health disorders. All right, so this is just to give you practice. I know not everybody in here is a psychology or education or caseworker, but we do have a lot of people that are, and this is great practice for tracking somebody's sleep. And I know you're practicing on your own, but at least you get an idea of what that looks like, okay? All right, any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So do you want us to submit the journal as well, or are we just writing?
Yep, the journal and your synopsis. And I'm the only one that's going to see that. So nobody's going to be reviewing or looking at any of your, if you are having crazy dreams, nobody's going to be seeing that but me, okay? And I'm not doing anything with it.
Roger, thank you.
Uh-huh. Any other questions? How are the groups going? Is everybody communicating? Anybody not get in touch with their group yet? Okay. I'll take silence as a positive sign. I know earlier in the week we had talked about it. Some of you were having difficulty getting in touch with your groups. So good. I'm glad to hear. Seems like things are moving along with that. All right. So let's get going and finish up our talk about sleep. As I explained to you, sleep is very important, because if we don't get sleep, what are some negative side effects? What are some long-term illnesses or issues that we can experience with sleep?
Insomnia.
Okay. Insomnia is yeah, I'll cover that. But long term, insomnia is the disorder, and it's the problem. But what are some long term problems of not sleeping well, either health or mental health or whatever?
Anxiety, as you mentioned.
Okay. Also a cause of sleep disorders. So think long term. So what would happen if, say, you suffered from insomnia and you haven't slept in an entire week? What sort of problems would that produce, either in your life or in your health? What happens?
I know you'd start to hallucinate.
Say again?
Hallucination.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's to the extreme. Yeah, absolutely. Without getting sleep in days, you could start hallucinating, right? Okay. I heard somebody else chime in. I think it was Fahim.
Awareness.
Awareness. How about weight?
Awareness goes down. I'm sorry. Awareness goes down. I'm sorry.
What's that?
I was gonna say, like, your awareness probably goes down. You're not gonna be aware of your surroundings.
Right, right. Okay, so alertness goes down, right? You're not going to be as alert. So alertness goes down. Think about health issues. What health issues could arise from difficulties with long-term difficulties with sleep?
In my case, I lose weight, and like weight loss or weight gain.
Okay, usually weight gain. Now, what do you mean by weight loss?
So I mean, maybe that's just how my body works, but I would lose a great amount of kilos. I measure in kilos
Uh-huh.
over a few days
If you don't sleep.
if I don't sleep.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's also from being nauseous and maybe vomiting and stuff like that.
Okay. So it sounds like there are probably some other things that are occurring there. But in general, with sleep problems, if somebody has difficulty getting a good night's rest, we do see a tendency for weight gain. Okay, so usually. Now, that could be mixed. In some cases, maybe somebody's experiencing high levels of anxiety and depression in which they're not eating or sleeping, in which case we might see a decrease in weight. But we are also, if that were to happen, we would also see a decrease in nutrition, okay, which fuels your body, keeps your body alert, keeps your body running and functioning, especially with your immune system. So so we might see both of those with associated with sleep problems. With weight gain, what we're looking at is people that tend to sleep less, and this plays into part with especially with sleep apnea. If people have a chronically hard time getting sleep at night, they tend to be more sedentary throughout the day. They're not exercising, so exercising goes down, right? Exercise goes down. They're not walking as much. They're not nearly as active. We might start seeing secondary issues arise, like diabetes, right? Because we're sedentary, and we're not diabetes, and we're not burning off the sugar. We're probably ingesting larger quantities of sugar just to keep us active, right? So diabetes might be an issue, along with weight increase in unhealthy eating habits. We might also see heart disease, right? And many other medical problems. It's pretty astonishing, isn't it? That so much is wrapped up in our sleep. And I think I mentioned Wednesday, we spend a third of our time, a third of our lives in sleep. So it is very important. So we want to be aware of what our sleep patterns are. And that's kind of the spirit of the assignment I gave you this week. Okay. So what are some of the sleep disorders that your chapter talked about? Now, these are the actual disorders that keep us from getting a good night's sleep. And they could be, I think one of them that was brought up are night terrors. There are two of them. And nightmares. Does anybody, either from the book or from their own personal knowledge, know what the difference is between night terrors and nightmares?
One occurs during REM sleep and one occurs not during REM sleep. I don't remember which one is which though.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody want to take a guess? You're right. Which one is which? Who wants to guess? Which one occurs in REM and which one occurs in non-REM?
Sorry,
Our,
you
Go ahead.
go ahead.
no, I didn't exactly hear like the differences between the two, so I was gonna ask you to repeat it.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna explain. So night terrors happen during non-REM. Excuse me, been talking all day. Non-REM and REM. Excuse me. All right, so night terrors are what happened. If you remember, I think I had the slide on here where our brain, our lower brain, remember our activation synthesis theory? Sorry, that's a terrible lower brain. And then you have your upper brain, right? Or cerebral cortex. So your cerebral cortex, that's where all the information and processing and judgment and emotions, everything is processed. All your fine motor skills, all your visual and spatial and facial recognition happen in your cerebral cortex, right? Your lower brain is your animal brain. That's the part that controls whether we're experiencing fear or basic raw emotions like sadness or happiness. Our thoughts of our actions for reproduction occur there. A lot of our autonomic systems are functioning in that area, like our heart rate and our breathing and our temperature. So all of those things happen in our lower brain. So with night terrors, what usually occurs is our lower brain is activated. It's got our sympathetic nervous system. If you remember, our sympathetic nervous system is responsible for our fight or flight, right? So we are activated with our lower brain. So according to the activation synthesis theory, is if this is lit up and this is activated, when we go into REM sleep, our cerebral cortex kicks in and tries to interpret, sorry, man, I'm having a hard time talking today. All of these signals and all of these activations we're experiencing in our lower brain, all right? So when we go into REM sleep, that happens. So we start visualizing whatever it is that we're fearing, right? And nightmares are very fear-based. So nightmares are fearful dreams. Oops, fearful dreams, sorry. And night terrors happen before we go into REM sleep. So our cerebral cortex is not activated. So what that might look like, if anybody has ever experienced this, you wake up in the middle of the night just like gasping, like you sit up in bed and your heart's racing and you're probably sweating and you're experiencing a terror. You don't know why. Maybe you didn't have a vision in your head. Maybe you didn't have a dream about it or nightmare. So that happens that usually occurs in non-REM sleep. So we don't have a vision. We don't have a dream to associate with those terrors, with that feeling of panic. So that's why we say that doesn't happen during REM sleep, because the cerebral cortex is not yet activated for dreaming. We do see a lot of night terrors and quite a bit of nightmares as well, but mostly night terrors associated with what disorder? Does anybody want to guess? Nobody? How about PTSD? What is PTSD?
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right. Post-traumatic stress disorder. So PTSD is usually where we see night terrors. And again, that's the lower brain is activated either throughout the day, and then when they go to sleep, they don't necessarily get into dreams. So night terrors are a problem because we need REM sleep. And if we're constantly having night terrors and that's robbing us from REM sleep, that could affect our ability to function the next day. Nightmares, while they are alarming, they're not nearly as disruptive. So somebody might have nightmares on a frequent basis, but at least they're getting REM sleep, which is somewhat helpful. Okay. Both are disruptive, but nightmares are probably less disruptive to your overall quality of sleep than night terrors. Okay. Does that make sense? Any questions on nightmares or night terrors before we move on? Okay. So let's talk about sleepwalking. Now, many of you at some point have probably experienced sleepwalking. This usually occurs in our childhood and maybe early teenage years. I think it's estimated about 28% of people have experienced sleepwalking at some point in their life. Now, sleepwalking happens during REM sleep, where your brain is most active. It's actually your sensory motor cortex is activated, your judgment is activated. However, your sensory input is not activated. All right. So if you remember, when GABA is released into your system, it paralyzes you. It's supposed to paralyze everything. So that includes your eyes, your ears, your limbs, except for your eyes. Your eyes are the only thing. I'm sorry, your eyeballs, the actual eye movement. Your vision is not activated. So what happens with sleepwalking is there's a disruption in that GABA. So for whatever reason, our bodies are not deactivated. They're not paralyzed. So we start acting out whatever it is our dreams are. And we may not know what that is. We may not even remember the next day. But we start playing out scenarios, either walking around the house or some people have engaged in sleep eating. So just really about anything. So what do you know about sleepwalking? Are there any myths or facts that you know about sleepwalking?
Can't you not wake someone up like in the middle of their sleepwalking?
Okay. You heard don't wake up. What do y'all think?
I heard that before.
Okay. Anybody disagree with that?
I do, because like my brother has really bad sleepwalking, and we have to wake him up in order to get him out of it.
Okay. And how do you usually do that?
Well, it's weird. It can only be my mom that can wake him up. Like he doesn't listen to anybody else, but we just have to like kind of touch him and like tell him it's okay. And then he like wakes up and comes to it, and then he stops, I guess. Okay. And for some reason, thank you for sharing that. I will address that. For some reason, my screen stopped sharing with you again. So let me fix that. And so there's really, I've heard the same thing, that we're not supposed to wake up people that are sleepwalking. And I'll give you my spiel on it. What I believe to be true with that is it is dangerous for somebody to be walking around a house and not knowing what they're doing. Okay. So, they could bump into something, they could fall down and seriously hurt themselves. They could go through drawers and cut themselves. There are a lot of things that a person could really injure themselves on if they're not aware of what they're doing. So, in my professional opinion, I agree with, was that Megan you were talking about, your brother? Yeah.
Yeah. So gently waking the person up or guiding them back to bed is really, really probably more important than just letting them go. Now, the reason why they tell you don't wake somebody up, because if you don't know what you're doing, that person could evoke a fear response, and it could cause them to be violent when they wake up because they're disoriented and they're confused. So you might get hurt, or they might fall down and hurt themselves. So, use your best judgment. If you ever encounter a sleepwalker, use your best judgment to either maybe try and get them to bed or gently wake them up so that they don't hurt themselves. All right. All right. So yeah, interesting about sleepwalking. That's another disorder, because if they do hurt themselves, that could obviously interrupt their sleep, right? Some other disorders that your book noted was insomnia. Now, insomnia is interesting because it varies. It varies on severity. Like you can have somebody that just has a hard time sleeping. Maybe they get 2 or 3 hours a night. That could be caused for medical reasons. That could be, it could be one of these. It could be night terrors, nightmares, or anxiety, right? So in extreme cases, and I've seen this a couple times in my practice, I've seen insomnia where people don't sleep for weeks, and they're a mess, and they go into almost an REM sleep, but then they snap right back out of it throughout the day because their mind is trying to make up for it. But insomnia could be that severe that people just don't sleep. And that causes problems. You know, it makes them irritable. Again, makes them irritable, makes them their interactions with people. So they might not hold very good relationships with people. They might have a hard time functioning and focusing on their job. So finances might suffer. They might make bad decisions. So they might have legal issues. So yeah, insomnia is a big problem. Okay, this as now with insomnia, to be diagnosed with insomnia, again, we look at several things. Is it reoccurring? Does the person suffer from it, and like on frequency wise? Do they has it been more than 6 months since the onset of insomnia before we can give them a diagnosis? Now, what are some ways to treat insomnia that you know of, according to your book or personal experiences?
Medicine.
Meds, absolutely. Prescriptions. I will share with you that in my past experience, people with severe insomnia tend to do what?
Drink.
Addiction, right? Self-medication, absolutely. Some might be cannabis, it might be marijuana. Self-medicate is a huge problem with people with insomnia. And the danger with that is you can have what's called blowback. For example, many people that suffer from insomnia might take benzodiazepines. Benzos are one of those things that we develop a tolerance pretty quickly, and it's highly addictive. But it gets to the point where we need more and more benzos to sleep better or sleep at all. And what happens is you get into this vicious cycle with it to the point where you can develop even worse insomnia by engaging in self-medication. All right. Narcolepsy. Again, this is one of those, it used to be cut and dry. We used to think of narcolepsy as somebody that would just pass out. They would be walking around one day. I had a friend that had a dog that suffered from narcolepsy, and it was the weirdest thing. You would see the dog, he would walk through the house, and we're watching football or whatever, and he just falls over and goes to sleep immediately. Those are severe cases of narcolepsy. We're learning that narcolepsy is a little bit more broad than that, but the definition of narcolepsy is the person falls immediately into REM sleep. To REM. Now, what's the danger in that? What's the danger? Go ahead.
If you're working with like heavy machinery, or if you're like driving, you fall asleep, you can cause an accident.
Absolutely. So people that are diagnosed with narcolepsy aren't really able to hold licenses. So that could affect their finances. That could affect their ability to be self-sustaining. Luckily, there are medications that treat that. But I believe, narcolepsy from Baston, narcolepsy. Lost my train of thought. But yeah, people that with a narcolepsy diagnosis might have a hard time. I believe that's the state law for Pennsylvania. When I was in Texas, I know that was a law down there. I'm not sure about. Does anybody know if Pennsylvania has that same law? If you have a diagnosis of narcolepsy, you're not allowed to drive. Anybody
Yeah, they do.
Okay, that is the law here. Okay, it usually is. It's usually the case because it is a dangerous thing. Sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is it's making more of a prevalence within our diagnostic diagnostic tool bag, okay? Because it goes undiagnosed for a really long time for most people. Some people don't ever get diagnosed, but we're starting to realize that sleep apnea affects us much more than what we really know. Now, we do associate sleep apnea with snoring. Now, there are two types of sleep apnea. We have your central nervous system, which tells your lungs to stop breathing, which is a little bit more rare. It doesn't happen too frequently, but it does happen. So somebody that has the CNS sleep apnea, their brain basically shuts their heart and shuts their lungs down for a period of time to the point where they wake up. They have to wake up gasping for air. The other type is obstructive sleep apnea. So you got CNS and obstructive. So obstructive, we usually see with overweight, usually, not always. I know a lot of people that might be in decent shape that still have obstructive sleep apnea. So what that means is that you have either skin or something in the back, tissue in the back of your neck or your tongue, either your adenoids or your tonsils, something is obstructing your airway, because what you're supposed to be doing when you're sleeping is lifting those things out of your airway so you can breathe. And sometimes that doesn't happen that way, and they just kind of collapse. And this is where we really associate sleep apnea with snoring. Now, snoring is not sleep apnea. It's very important to note that. Snoring is just, it is an obstruction, but as long as the person is getting into REM sleep, it's really not that big of an issue. It might keep partners or family or friends up, but it's not really that big of an issue. It might cause sleep disorders for other people. But normally, people with sleep apnea, we do associate with snoring, if that makes sense. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. So I'm going to round this out with hypnosis. Now, what do you know about hypnosis? Either from the reading or your own personal experience. Has anybody been hypnotized that cares to share their experience? If you're willing, and it's kind of a cool story.
I was once.
Yeah. Was it for fun?
No, it was, yeah, it was at a school. It was at a school event, high school event.
Okay. Okay. What did they do?
They made us like when we were hypnotized. You mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember we were driving a car, and there was a girl walking by, and we had to like wave to her, and then there was our mom that we had to hide and stuff like that.
Okay.
We had a concert. We were putting on a concert, like we were in a band.
Okay. And did you actually visualize this stuff as it was happening?
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember afterwards, like I didn't remember, like you didn't remember anything until you took a sip of water. That's how like he did it. And I remember when I took the sip of water, I was like everything came back to me. I like couldn't believe everything I did. It was weird.
Okay. Okay. That's really cool. We had at ESU last year, we had a hypnotist come in for I can't remember. It was one of the big gatherings for the freshmen, and I think maybe somebody in this class remembers it, but they had everybody up on stage, and I think it was Rihanna. They had hypnotized them to believe that they were Rihanna, and they were up there dancing and singing like Rihanna.
Yeah, a couple of my friends were hypnotized using the big gathering from ESU. I saw a couple of my friends up there, and I was like, oh my Lord.
Was it Rihanna? Did I get that story right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I heard the same thing. In fact, a lot of them were in my class, and I'm really shocked because not many people have gone through that experience, but it was over half my class that we either participated in that or had watched it. So hypnosis, not hypnotized. Hypnosis. So hypnosis, put simply, is a state of consciousness in which a person is susceptible to suggestion. So state of consciousness where susceptible to did I get susceptible? Yeah. Nope. Susceptible to suggestion. Okay. Now, there are a lot of theories as to why we get hypnotized. Freud, again, bringing up Freud's id, ego, and superego. Remember, the id is below the surface. And he theorized that we call that as our silent passenger, as our silent, I mix it up. Dexter, I'm thinking dark passenger. I'm sorry, the observer, hidden observer is what it is. So he theorized that we all have behind us, and if you remember me talking earlier about this, look at the news screen, you see the person up on the news screen and you see the ticker across the bottom. So hypnosis, according to that theory, is tapping into that ticker across the bottom. That's tapping into our automatic thoughts that we really don't have control over, or our altered state. So our hidden observer is accessed during hypnosis. Okay. And once we do that, it's kind of like, if you want to use the computer analogy, it's kind of like tapping into your boot directory or your, behind your operating system, and you're getting into the actual computer itself and able to control that based on whether the person is suggestible or not. Now, does hypnosis work on everybody? Do we know?
I know the person tested whether it would work on them, but it couldn't.
Right. It really depends on the person. And people that get into the art of hypnosis are able to pinpoint, they're able to identify people that might be a little bit more suggestible to others. Now that sounds kind of hooky, doesn't it? It sounds kind of like very science fiction. Like, you can only be hypnotized if you think you're able to be hypnotized, right? Or you're only going to see ghosts if you believe in ghosts, right? So there are a lot of skeptics out there that think that this is hooky, but we do know that people are suggestible. We've seen it. Now we've demonstrated it with over countless public forums and videos. But before I get into, I want to show you a video of somebody being hypnotized and let you decide for yourself. So the hidden observer we consider to be a dissociation, hypnosis as dissociation. Okay, and we're going to talk a lot about dissociation when we get into mental illnesses. But dissociation basically is pulling away from your conscious state, your alert and awareness, and kind of going behind the scenes and not being aware of what you're doing, kind of like an altered state. And we're going to know, and we'll talk about that when we talk about dissociative identity disorder, or what used to be called multiple personality, or dissociative fugue, when somebody commits an action or a crime and isn't aware of it. They have no knowledge of it whatsoever. So we'll talk a lot about dissociation later. The other theory is that, so hidden observer, I should have done that a little bit different, is dissociation. Social cognitive theory suggests, suggests that we're not in an altered state, but we're playing the role of an expectation somebody expects us to do. So for example, if you can imagine that you're on a stage and you're with a group of people, that somebody is telling you that, oh, my screen stopped sharing again. I'm sorry. They're telling you that you're being hypnotized and that you're going to be expected to perform a certain action, like cluck like a chicken or forget your name or whatever. That person now has an expectation to perform that act because people are watching them. Okay, does that make sense? So those are the two prominent theories of where hypnosis comes from. Now, what hypnosis cannot do, it cannot give you strength beyond what you already have. Now, we've heard stories, usually folklore, about people being hypnotized and lifting great things that they wouldn't normally be able to do. Another myth about hypnosis is that it cannot enhance your memory. So if you don't remember something, and this was a false up until recently, actually, if you cannot remember something, hypnosis is not going to help you remember something more vividly. And this became a problem, especially in forensics, when we had a bunch of, we had scientists or psychologists that were hypnotizing people that they thought might have been traumatized. And what they were finding is that the art of suggestibility was it was implanting stories inside people's heads and making them believe that they were traumatized. And maybe they were, but the suggestibility or influence of putting a traumatizing story into somebody's head was enough for them to recall that. And when we get into memories, we haven't done memories yet, right? We're doing that next week. Well, you'll read about that, and hopefully we'll be able to I have a good video out there, and hopefully we'll be able to do some cool stuff with that. Okay. The other thing that hypnosis cannot do is regress people to an earlier stage of life. So we can't go back to our childhood. We can maybe remember something that was readily available in our memories for long-term memories for childhood, but we can't regress somebody to the point where they're actually living in their childhood and interacting with people from their past. Okay, it doesn't happen that way. What it does do is it does help us to reduce pain. So anybody that, like for example, phantom limb pain, which occurs when somebody loses a limb due to an accident or whatever, they might be able to, they might experience a lot of pain, like their limb is actually still there. And hypnosis is good for diverting the sensation of that pain to other areas of their body so they don't feel that pain nearly as strongly. And it does help, obviously, help people to relax a little bit. Okay. All right. Any questions on hypnosis? All right. So I want to also discuss altered states of sleep, and primarily with stimulants and hallucinogens. So we use medications for and depressants as well. We use medications for all reasons, right? We use it to help with pain. We use it to have body functions operate a little bit better, or boost our metabolism or whatever. We also use medications to help with our brain, help with brain functioning. And that could be through it, and relating to sleep. We could use depressants to help us relax a little bit and get us to sleep. We can use hallucinogens to get our minds to drift off into a relaxed state, right? And stimulants, of course, affect our sleep, keep us from getting a good night's sleep. So what are some stimulants maybe that you're aware of that affect your sleep? Anybody care to share? That keep you awake. What stimulants keep you awake?
Your cell phone?
Drug-wise, yes. Cell phones probably do, but yeah, drug-wise. Caffeine. Caffeine. What else? Nicotine, perhaps?
Sugar.
Sugar, yeah, sugar could. And yeah, the jury's still out. Some people respond a little bit differently to sugar, as they do caffeine. I think I was talking to somebody, I don't know if it was from this class, but they shared with the class that they actually drink a cup of coffee before they go to bed tonight. Does that apply to anybody here?
Yeah.
Yeah, helps you sleep?
Yeah.
Some people are that way. I'm not that way. If I have a cup of coffee or even an iced tea before bed, I'm going to be up all hours of the night. So again, the reason why I bring all this stuff up is because with the drug interactions infecting our sleep is something to look at. So if, for example, you're doing one of these sleep journals and you find that it takes 3 hours for you to go to bed, I'm going to look at that journal, and then I'm going to go backwards and say, well, when did you have your last meal? In fact, I was just working with somebody recently who was telling me that they ate a big meal right about 11 o'clock at night, and they couldn't get to bed, including a Mountain Dew, and couldn't get to sleep till about 3-4 o'clock in the morning. They tried to, they laid down in bed at midnight, but what happens is their stomach is digesting that caffeine is surging through their body, of course they're not going to be able to go to sleep. So one of the things that I worked on in reducing their anxiety, because their sleep was causing their inability to function the next day, and yada yada yada. You know, we've kind of gone through this before as to what sleep does. So working backwards, we came up with the schedule for her to not eat until, for her to abstain from eating anything past 8 o'clock. No big meals, no caffeine after 6 p.m. So that way she would be able to relax and her stomach isn't digesting, and the caffeine will be out of her system. And that improves sleep. So anyway, just going through these examples in your journals are going to help you maybe to not only see how they go, but to see what your sleep schedule is like, see what your processes are before bed. And if you do encounter anything, work backwards and see what's happening beforehand. Okay. Any questions on sleep, hypnosis, dreams? How'd y'all like this lesson?
It was
really interesting, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, we do a lot more stuff, and I'm with this class. Maybe if I can figure out a way to do it, when we get to stress and relaxation, I'm not going to hypnotize anybody, but I'm going to show you breathing techniques that I use in my practice to help people relax their sympathetic nervous system and kind of put them in a deeper state of relaxation. Again, not going to hypnotize anybody, but I'll show you some of these techniques a little bit later. Okay. All right. So before we depart today, does anybody have any questions on anything?
I mean, like, I have a question, but it's like not for anyone else in the class.
Okay. So Elijah, just hang back here. I'll meet with you after everybody else goes. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Does the project have to be an APA, or can we just answer the questions?
Everything has to be an APA. Okay. So if you need help, please contact the tutoring center or the writing center. But I have lots of examples in the content, under content. I think it's content resources or something. I don't have my where is it?
When I was reading the directions on the thing, it didn't say that we had to put the links in APA for the 5 questions that we answered. So I just put the 3 links. And I was thinking that on the final assignment you would want the APA. So I just turned it in as is. So
Okay. If you want to go back, I mean, I'm going to give you feedback either way on that. But if you want to go back and correct that and send another copy, that's up to you. Okay. But yeah, APA from here on out. All right.
Okay.
All right. If there are no other questions, I hope you all have a fantastic and restful weekend. I'll see you all. Actually, Monday, before I forget, Monday is just going to be a one-on-one day. So if anybody has anything, I'll open up like the breakout rooms and meet with people if they need anything. So we're not going to have a lesson on Monday, but we'll meet everybody for a lesson on Wednesday if you want. Okay. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too. Hold on a second before.
I have a question.
Okay, hold on just a second. Let's see. Let everybody get out first. All right. So Elijah, I know you had a question. Are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
You're still here. Okay. Did anybody else have anything for me?
I have a question.
Shadira, did I pronounce that correct?
Yes. I have a question too.
Okay, so go ahead, Shadira. Go ahead.
You said we had to do 5 questions. I didn't see that. Yeah.
You haven't seen any questions?
No. And I do it on my phone, and ETL is down right now. So every time I try to go to it, it just goes right back up.
Okay. Okay, so D2L. Let me look. Issue. Oops. Okay, I'm not showing D2L down at all. Are you still showing that it's down?
Yeah.
Okay. contact tech support. D2L is up and running, so it might be something with your phone or your internet or something.
Yeah, where can I find a question?
What questions in particular?
He said that I heard somebody say 5 questions.
Everything that you need to do is going to be under week 4, under content, week 4, discussions or assessments. That's everything that's due. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Laura, did you have something?
Yeah. So the journal, the sleep journal is due today or the 27th.
Go ahead. You're good until Sunday, I believe, for that one.
Okay, and then so everything when it said, because sometimes people switch up like, like when it says due the 27th, but then they say, oh, I want to do today. So like, I just want to make sure like everything's gonna, like, that's fine. Like Sunday's fine.
Yeah, Sunday's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Have a good weekend.
You too.
All right, Jacob, did you have anything for me? All right, so I'm going to start removing people here. And Izzy, did you have anything for me? All right, so let me get rid of Izzy. All right, Elijah, go ahead. What's your question?
All right, so I was going through my assignments and my work, and I saw that I missed week 2's assignment. I didn't even notice that until like just recently.
Okay.
Is there a way that I can make it up, even not for full points, but maybe for like half?
Yeah, go ahead and go ahead and submit it and email me when you've done that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
That it?
Yes, sir.
That was easy. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too.
Yeah, bye.